Hello everyone, my name is Trevor, I go by the Mr. Trails, welcome to the channel. In today's video, Radiant Escalation is finally here because Dauntless patch 1.10.3 is going live tomorrow. Not only do we have this, but we have a new Behemoth named Alyra, who brings with it new weapons and armor, and we also have a new cell and so much more. In this video here, we are going to cover everything the 1.10.3 patch is looking to offer. Guys, this is the most work I've ever done for an update video, and there's a separate Radiant Escalation guide that should also be launching today, so if you would please drop a like on the video. And of course, subscribe to the channel for more Dauntless. And once the patch is available to download, we will be doing an uncapped subathon over on the Twitch with a 48-hour minimum so we can bask in the greatness of Radiant Escalation. You'll be able to use subs, bits, money donations, or merch purchases to make the stream last longer, potentially even making it last for several weeks. Some of the main incentives will be getting me to play a couple of different games as well as making some upgrades to the PC setup. Twitch.tv/themrtrails tomorrow. You gotta be there. But without further ado, let us jump into one of the biggest patches in Dauntless history. Let us begin, of course, with talking a bit about Radiant Escalation. Today, I will also be releasing a separate in-depth Radiant Escalation guide. We'll be taking a deep look at the unique amps and modifiers, the unique combat mechanics, and what a good talent tree would look like. But for this vid, we'll talk about the key highlights. Radiant Escalation is the final escalation of the elemental set, taking place at a distant research facility that was built upon an ancient temple. You'll be able to unlock Radiant Escalation from the Slayer's Path, 1 to 13 at milestone 6 and 10 to 50 at milestone 12. It will be featuring the Chronivore as the keystone behemoth. The Chronivore will now be removed from the Paradox Breaks, and getting its weapons and armor will now only be done in Radiant Escalation. The Chronivore also has received a few tweaks, basically just making the behemoth a tad bit slower and no longer setting you on fire, to make the fight a bit easier. Now that it's in escalation, the fight kinda needed to be tuned down a bit since you only have 3 revives and no way to get more. Chronivore especially will still hit very hard though until you unlock more of the power boosts from the Radiant Escalation skill tree. For Heroic Radiant Escalation, it will be inserted into its proper slot in the Heroic rotation and will be launching on June 23rd, accompanied by the 1.10.5 patch. Beyond the elements themselves, each escalation has had some type of theme to it previously. Shock being crits, Blaze being stagger, Umbral being wound, Terra being shields and healing, and Frost having frostbite and the avatar system. Radiant Escalation's new amps don't quite have a theme just yet. However, there will be more amps releasing in future patches, starting with 1.10.4, which will bring the new amps to also having a bit of a lantern focus. Radiant should now be the only escalation where you can find Lightbound Koshai, and you'll have increased chances of encountering the new behemoth Alyra in this escalation. Some of the new amps that will be available at launch include a new Elemental Summoner amp, which will activate on the Lantern Hold, the Earthshaker amp, where jumping will release a shockwave to deal a large AoE damage, Flicker, which will allow you to become unstaggerable and get 50% damage reduction on a Lantern Hold, and perhaps my personal favorite, Banner Planting, creates a pylon that buffs movement speed, damage, and damage reduction for everyone inside. More details in my dedicated Radiant Escalation guide video. And could we have an escalation without new modifiers to make us want to pull our hair out? Again, all of the modifiers will be detailed in the Radiant Escalation guide, also coming out today. But as a quick rundown, the Primal Suppression Pillars will be coming along as escalation modifiers with some slight adjustments. The pillars will have 2 different effects based on if you're considered to be in the radius of the pillar or outside of it. Destroying the pillar will activate the outside effect until the pillar is rebuilt. There's the part and wound damage pillars with the same in-area effects that we know already, and some painful out-of-area effects, but the mod you absolutely have to look out for in this escalation is the Immortal Suppression modifier. The Immortal Suppression modifier is for the healing pillar, the in effect not allowing you to heal from any source whatsoever, and the out effect making you deal reduced damage, and the behemoth will not be able to die. In order to slay a behemoth with this modifier, you will be required to have the in effect active for the end of the fight, meaning the pillar has to be up. At 25% or less HP, the out of area effect will make it so the behemoth is immune to all of your damaging attacks. So be sure to look out for when you have this modifier. The stagger damage pillar won't be in the game due to time constraints, but may likely appear alongside some of the future amps. There will also be some unique mechanics involved in the escalation, the first of which being a puzzle system. Back when New World released, I talked about the potential to add some types of dungeons that would be accompanied by puzzles of sorts in Dauntless, and we're actually seeing something a bit like that now. In each of the first 4 rounds of the escalation, you'll have to find a symbol that you'll need to remember. They make a pretty loud noise, and they're in the same spots every time, so you will be able to find them. Once you make it past round 4, you'll find a staging area, and if you put the correct sequence of symbols into it, you'll gain an additional amp before going into the final round. There are also bonus modifiers to rounds 2 and 3, which will be present on every single Radiant escalation run. The Bismuth Eruptions modifier will spawn in Arena 2, which will periodically spawn bismuth crystals that have radiant shields surrounding them. These will be able to trap you inside, and you'll be able to break the shields, or after a short time they will self-destruct. And the Orrery Cannons modifier will be present on Arena 3. You can interact with a cannon to fire them, which will release several perfect strike waves in front of it. And yes, before you ask, these cannons can indeed interrupt behemoths. There are 3 cannons on round 3 and another on round 4. However, I do believe this is a bug from testing that hasn't changed. And again, this isn't all of the Radiant escalation features, but we'll talk about everything in more detail in a separate video. Along with Radiant escalation, there are going to be some general changes to escalation systems and talent trees. Elemental variants are now going to be able to spawn in escalations that aren't their native element, and should only be incapable of spawning in their opposite element escalation. The Strega's Tonic talent that was found in Shock, Blaze, Umbral, and Terra escalation, which gave passive lifesteal, is no longer going to be available. It will be replaced by the Strega's Harvester talent, which will give a bonus chance to get double part breaks from any break in that escalation. This honestly isn't the end of the world. Parasitic 3 or the Koshai Lantern are great options if you need a tiny bit of lifesteal without having to completely rework your build. The Planar Voyage modifier has been changed from a Pac-Man minigame to something actually pretty good. While you're in the Umbral realm, you'll take 50% less damage and become unstaggerable. Dealing 750 damage to behemoths while you're in the Umbral realm will give you an Umbral stack. And when Planar Voyage ends, the entire team gets a 10% damage buff for each stack. This is actually insane because 750 is not that much damage. So this will be a great mod to get when you're running squads. The talent tree unlocks for this escalation are arguably more insane, so check out the other video for that. The Farslayer's Precision passive now gives a bonus wound damage without sacrificing the part damage, a very welcome change. And a massive change not only affecting heroic escalation but also trials, is behemoths will no longer have additional wound health scaling from their regular power levels. This will mean that trials times across the board for groups will go down by a couple of seconds at least, and potentially dropping it a lot depending on the behemoth. We're a good bit into the video now, but before I go any further, this video is brought to you by me for themrtrails.store. We now have 12, count them, 12 designs in the store, including the most recently released Conflict series. There's Malkarian fighting Agris, Torgadoro fighting Urska, and Thrax fighting the Chronivore. There's a full detailed version as well as a line art versions of them. And guys, to celebrate Radiant escalation for the next week, use promo code RESCA5 to receive $5 off any t-shirts in the store. That's code RESCA5 for $5 off any t-shirts at themrtrails.store. Now back to the video. And now that we're back, let's talk about the new behemoth, Alyra. Alyra is the next evolution of behemoths in the Dauntless universe, being able to command all of the elements outside from Umbral. As a side note here, the Chronivore doesn't have the frost and fire abilities of its other attacks. It still does them, it's just different. Alyra will be replacing the Chronivore on the Paradox Breaks in the Melodic Convergence event. Along with this change, the Paradox Breaks will no longer be home to Elder and Primal behemoths. Chronostones will now be a guaranteed kill drop from just behemoths on the Paradox Breaks in general, meaning you won't have to deal with the Primal and Elder powers nonsense. You'll also be able to get Chronostones from solving the puzzle in Radiant Escalation. You'll now only need 4 Chronostones to start the event. The Melodic Convergence event will consist of 3 rounds, 2 random behemoths at level 17 and 18, then Alyra at the end being level 19. Alyra uses the power of glyphs and runes during its Aether-charged and enraged states to command the powers of the other elements. It's a fox-like chimera, and the audio design team went crazy with this behemoth's cry. It has a decent variety of attacks, including a charging interrupt, an attack where it becomes a spinning blade, a quick wing swipe, a Koshai-like tail swipe, and a variety of fire breath style attacks, which can change elements based on the glyph Alyra wants to use. It can be a radiant beam, a fireball barrage, some radiant bombs that will trap you, or can be docile, like Urska's Roar. The spinning blade attack can also inherit some elemental abilities, including a Nezaga-like shock spire and poison effects while under a Terra glyph. Stepping on most of these glyphs will just make them explode in your face. However, there are some glyphs that are Slayer friendly, including one that will just give you a temporary damage bonus. I might do a more in-depth piece about Alyra soon, but we'll need to move on to try to make this video somewhat shorter. With most new behemoths, this also means new weapons and armor, and Alyra is no exception. To craft the Alyra weapons, you'll need 8 leg drops, 3 head drops, and 12 scales, which is a slay drop. To craft the Alyra armor pieces, you'll need 6 tail drops, 6 wing drops, and 8 scales. To power surge the weapons and armor, you'll need 10 Siren's Core, the rare drop, and 4 Symphonic Shards, the epic drop. The biggest issue from all of this is going to be the tails for the armors. You can of course use a build with Sharpen 6 and one-shot it with an axe crit or a concussive payload from a pike. If you're running in a squad and opt for the one-shot method, you'll have to make sure everyone hits Alyra before breaking the part to make sure everyone gets it. The head drops will be a similar issue, but this is mainly due to Alyra keeping its head well above the ground at most times. Repeaters will be able to take care of that issue nicely, or again, just opt for a one-shot method. The Alyra weapons will come with Etheric Attunement built in, as well as all of them having a power and defense slot on them. Etheric Attunement is a bit overused on weapons, but this weapon has a great reason for it. The Alyra weapon unique effect summons a glyph that can either be red or blue glyph. To switch what glyph is active, you simply jump, and there's an indication on the effects HUD for which is active. The larger face will be the red glyph, and the face inside the shield will be a blue glyph. For power surge weapons, the blue glyph will grant you 250 shields when the behemoths come in contact with it, stacking up to 600 shields. And the red glyph will explode for damage when a behemoth comes in contact with it. This explosion is similar to the Pangar unique effect, though it will only hit one part, but it will still do the stagger damage and wound damage functions of the Pangar bomb. The damage numbers for the red glyphs are either bugged or the descriptions were not updated to reflect their current values. The descriptions say the damage is 1500 to 2000 base damage, but in reality, non-power surge weapons will deal 750 base damage with the red glyph, and power surge weapons will deal 1000 base damage. The damage will be affected by your build perks, so you can make it deal more damage. And don't you guys worry, even at 1000 base damage, Alyra will still be the best radiant weapon available. Here's a funny thing, we were originally testing this at 3000 base damage, and that was just absolutely bonkers insane. If the damage was 2000, it would likely be the best weapon in the game by far. I'll have a build video for these weapons for you guys by Thursday. And for Alyra's armor, it's a bit defensive and move speed focused. The helmet has the new Invigorated perk, as well as a mobility slot. The chest plate has galvanized and a defensive slot. The gloves have Invigorated and a utility slot, and the boots have Swift and a defensive slot. The most useful of these would definitely be the helmet, perhaps even becoming a must-have for Tempest builds, as well as potentially using the gloves as well. But you might want to use a transmog stone on that chest piece, because it gives you some discount wings. But why would I say the helmet is a must-have for Tempest builds? Well, this leads us to the new cell, Invigorated. This is a new movement speed cell, and it's absolutely the best one yet. When you're below 50% stamina, you'll gain 20% movement speed at +3, and a whopping 50% movement speed at +6. This will be an instant add into any Tempest builds, perhaps being the best source of movement speed in the entire game now. And now it is finally time for the fashion news. As always, if you're going to make any premium purchases through Epic Games or the Dauntless Store, do consider using my supporter creator code themrtrails. Make sure the A is before the I. For those of you who don't know, the Hunt Pass system has been broken into 2 parts, being the Slayer Commission Hunt Pass, and a separate from those are the Cosmetic Hunt Passes. The Slayer Commission Pass is a 100 level pass that mainly gives gameplay boosting items, and once completed it gives you bonus currency for the reward cache. This will give you the full platinum return, so it's essentially potentially free if you have the platinum for it. This commission pass is the same one as the 1.10.0 patch, so if you've bought that already, it should not reset. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it did, and if it does, they will have to fix that. The cosmetic hunt passes are now 30 level hunt passes, with the main draw of purchase being cosmetic items. For 1.10.3, there will be 2 cosmetic hunt passes, the brand new Shadow Slayers Hunt Pass, as well as the Legacy Hunt Pass, Secret Assassins. Let's cover the Shadow Slayers Hunt Pass first. At level 1, we have the Andari Dreamlight Lantern. At level 5, we have the Andari Darkness Helmet. At level 8, we have the Andari Armor. At level 10, we have the Andari Aether Coil. At level 13, we have the Andari Sandals Boot Skin. At level 20, we have the Andari Shadow Armor. At level 23, we have the Return of the Andari Banner Fabric. At level 25, we have the Andari Kabuto Helmet. And at level 30, we have the Show Off Emote. And now, we have the Legacy Hunt Pass, being the Secret Assassins Hunt Pass originally released in 2019. At level 1, we have the Threat Display Hunt Arrival. At level 3, we have the Ripper Sword. At level 5, we have the Night Beacon Lantern. At level 7, we have the Shadow's Face Mask. At level 9, we have the Ogre's Claw Axe. At level 10, we have the Shadow's Grasp Gloves. At level 12, we have the Throwing Stars Emote. At level 14, we have the Mortality's Bite Chainblades. At level 15, we have the Starstruck Banner Emote. At level 17, we have the Festival Dance Emote. At level 19, we have the Demonic Brute Hammer. At level 20, we have the Shadow's Step Boots. At level 22, we have the Fatal Flourish Repeaters. At level 25, we have the One-Fingered Push-Ups emote. At level 26, we have the Dark Finality Warpike. At level 28, we have the Shadow's Metal Armor. At level 29, we have the Ghost Fox Mask. And at level 30, we have the classic Laughing Death Mask. Additionally, 1.10.3 brings us another cosmetic to the Trials store. Available for 1,000 gilded marks will be the Champion's Light Lantern Transmog. It's a gold and black broadsides lantern, and you will need to achieve a top 100 time in Dauntless Trials to get it. The weapon-specific, overall solo, and overall squad leaderboards do count for this. However, the console-specific leaderboards do not. And boy, this finally just now brings us to some random other stuff in this patch, but there's still a lot of that. Now, when performing a perfect charge on the axe, you will also get 50% damage reduction in addition to the unstaggerable effect. The Radiant Blinding effect caused by Rezikiri and Radiant Snails is no longer just a white screen flashbang, but now a grayscale effect that attempts to be easier on the eyes. All of the heroic Escalation Keystone Behemoths have now been given a dire-styled name. We now have Storm Rider Malkarian, Landbreaker Torgadoro, Fear Eater Thrax, Blightbringer Agaris, Bone Chiller Urska, and Soul Reaper Chronivore. Koshai now has a running animation that will allow it to go heal at Aether Vents faster. It used to just casually walk over there while you were still beating it to death. The Radiant Beam effects for Valimir and Rezikiri have been adjusted slightly. The Recruit Lantern is returning to the game for newer Slayers, being added to your inventory upon unlocking Lantern Crafting on the Slayer's path. Its ability gives you a non-stacking 300 health shield, basically a discount Skarn Lantern with no damage. They adjusted a boatload of menu UI that I don't feel like getting into. Thrax had a bug where you couldn't break parts after the portal train attack, which they say is fixed. We are on part 2 of them, saying the seizure trees have been fixed. We'll see if they are correct this time. And there are a lot more things that they say they have changed, but that's basically it as far as the major items are concerned. And can I just say, would it have killed them to add some of this stuff, especially the miscellaneous changes in other patches? This might just go down as the biggest Dauntless patch in history, which is largely their own doing by not wanting to split up any of the content releases. It's so large, I need additional videos to cover more important things in more detail. So make sure you guys drop a like for me, subscribe to the channel, and go watch those videos if you haven't done so already. And once again, twitch.tv/themrtrails uncapped subathon, starting as soon as this patch is available for download. But I have been Trevor, I go by the Mr. Trails, and I will catch you guys next time.